Hello viewers, welcome back to Docker presentation. This is Satyadev, Assistant Professor, VNR VJEC, Computer Science and Engineering Department. In the last presentation, I focused on Docker file, how to create Docker file, what are the commands used in the Docker file and all that stuff, right? So, and I talked about, once that file is ready, just running Docker build on the Docker file would create a Docker image. And when you say Docker run on the image, you get the actual Docker container hosted onto the Docker host, right? So, and that's run by the Docker engine, right? That's what I talked about in the last presentation. Now, so that means there are two commands I talked at high level for the Docker build and Docker run. Actually, that first word like Docker, right? That is the CLI, command line interface, right? So this is the command line interface for the entire Docker system ecosystem is the word Docker. Now it's actually an executable form. Let's not go much deep into how it is created. It's good form. Now in this presentation, what we are seeing is what are the other things that we can do using that CLI, right? So that Docker, 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 right? All lowercase, that executable or that command line interface. Not just build and run, right? There are several other things we can do. And again, in order to run a container, you don't need to write a Docker file at all. You can do a lot of stuff, manually also. Like you want to the first thing is like in the Docker file is from, right? It will pull the from Docker hub and stuff like that I told. Well, do we really need to have Docker if you don't have Docker file, but I want to pull a file from Docker hub? How should I do? I have my own file. I want to push it. How do you do? There are several other things that can be done using command line interface. In this presentation, we are going to see all those possible things, including the Docker build and Docker, right? So basically it is Docker with several other possibilities. That's what we are seeing in this presentation. Hope this is clear. So let's go to the first thing. Okay, so Docker commands. Docker commands are instructions issued through the Docker command line interface to interact with the Docker platform or ecosystem, Docker ecosystem. They allow users to manage Docker resources such as containers, images, networks, volumes, and the Docker system itself. So, apart from, containers and images, it's talking about networks, volumes, and the Docker system. The entire Docker system can be controlled using the CLI commands, Docker CLI commands. These commands communicate with Docker daemon, a background service that handles the creation, execution, and management of Docker objects. So there are several objects, not just images and containers. There are several objects that are created as part of Docker. So discuss them later. But here are the things. Here is the syntax of any Docker command. In general, if you want to use any Docker command, this is the Docker subcommand name, options, and arguments, right? So the parameters, arguments, parameters kind of thing, right? So, so this is so Docker is the CLI command line interface. Subcommand Docker build, okay, build -t, whatever file name, right? So argument. So that's how you specify the stuff. We'll see more into that. So let's go to see what are those commands. Let's see one by one. Docker ---- version displays the. So for certain things, I think explanation is needed. I will explain. For certain things, it's not needed. I just read it out. You can understand, right? So pretty easy. Docker ---- version displays the installed version of the Docker on the system. I hope this is pretty obvious. Docker info provides the detailed system-wide information about Docker installation, including the number of containers, images, storage drives, kernel version, and more. So complete info about the Docker, actual Docker installed on the machine, including the images and all that stuff, right? Docker login URL. Let's user log into a Docker registry such as Docker Hub, default one, or a private registry. This is necessary to push upload user Docker. So for example, I created an image which is like useful, and I want to give it to public, right? So that public also can make use of it. Then I want to push, right? In order to push that, I need to log into the Docker image, Docker hub, right? So this is how you can do using Docker login and registry URL. It will ask you for username and password and all that stuff, right? So um, that's what it is. You have to create those username passwords in the Docker hub. So once you do that, you enter into that using Docker login. Log out, logs out the Docker registry. Docker help displays the help of Docker commands. Docker command minus minus help provides the help for the particular command, whatever command you write, right? So Docker system prune command to clean up unused Docker resources such as stopped containers. This is very important. Unused networks, dangling images, not tagged, not used, and build cache. So this is to clean up stuff, right? Docker system prune. So you clean up stuff which is hanging and stuff like that. Docker CP copies files folders between container and the host. So you created a file, you want to copy into a volume, use Docker CP, right? So manually, I mean, that's how you do this. Docker pull. Docker pull downloads the Docker image from a registry. Example, Docker Hub defaulting to. When a particular version of an image using a tag, so we specify the tag also, like colon tag, right? So if no tag, it's default it defaults to the latest one. So I mean, by default, so for example, you want to version say some Java, it will try to get the latest version of the Java image, right? So Docker pull Java image, but you say I don't want Java 21, like or 17. You just colon 17, it will pull that 17. I mean, it's all when you go to Docker host, you will see that. So Docker image ls lists all Docker images that are currently stored in the local system. So that's what Docker image ls is. Docker build, this is what I said, like Docker file takes Docker file and builds the image file, right? Builds a new Docker image from the Docker file and a context and a context, the set of files at the specified path. So yeah, I mean, like I already talked about working directory and all that stuff, right? The -t flag used to tag the image with a name and a optional tag. So I mean, we can use -t, which is used for to give want to give a name, right? So for that image, we can give like this. So I mean, similarly, how we pull this image and tag name, we can create our own image name and tag name like this, and we'll space path, whatever file name that we want to give, you can give the file name path. I mean, basically file name. Docker RMI removes one or more images from your local system. You can refer to an image by its name or by its ID. Every image will have an ID. We can add it or we can remove it by using RMI. Docker push. Now, this is to push into the Docker Hub registry. Right? So, uploads an image to your Docker registry, Docker Hub, you must be logged into that registry. So once you log in, so while you are login, you specify the login and stuff like that, right? So wherever you log in, this one, right? So login, wherever you log in, that's where it's going to push, right? So if you are using Docker Hub, it will push in Docker Hub. If it's something else, it will push into something else, right? So that's what Docker push is. Docker tag creates a tag target image that refers to the source image. This is often used before pushing an image to a registry to name it appropriately. So I think in order to name it properly, you want to use tag that thing, right? So that's pretty much what it is. Docker search is a Docker hub for image matching the given. I mean, from client you can, but again, if you go Docker hub and there also you have a search, it's visual search. This is like online search. I mean, this is from command line, you are searching the Docker hub. That's pretty much what it is. Again, if you are Docker registry, it's Docker hub, right? So Docker run, which we see, like it runs the image, right? So creates and starts a new container from the specified image. This is one of the most fundamental Docker commands with many options, right? So it has got a lot of options, but we'll specify some. Docker run options. -d to detach runs the container in a background mode and prints the container ID. --name assigns a custom name to the container. So you want to name it, otherwise it will create its own name. If you don't specify name, you want to name it properly, you can do that. So yeah, I'll talk about that when you discuss about Kubernetes later. So yeah, Docker PS lists all currently running containers. Docker start starts one or more stopped containers. Let's say Docker run will run it, but after some time, let's say you stopped it. Now you want to run it again. When you say Docker run, it will create a new one. Instead of that, Docker start and give the ID. It will start whatever the Docker container that stopped. It will start that one, right? So Docker stops one or running containers gracefully. Docker restarts one or more containers. And Docker, there is a difference between start and restart. Restart is like where from the state it was stopped. Start is like it will cleans the stuff and restart again. Docker RM removes one or more stopped container. It removes the container. RMA is for removing images. RM is for removing the containers. Here it is RM, there it is RMA, right? So here it is images. For images, RMA. For containers, it is RM. Docker exec execute a command inside a running container, which is not really great, but yeah, I mean this is possible. Docker execute options -IT for interactive processor like shell, -D to run the command in a default mode in a background thread. I think this is what by default we used. Um, So you want to run a particular command in the Docker which is running. Let's say you are an application that is running, but in order for it to proceed further, you have to provide something, for example, right? So you copy something from local to only at that point, not initially. Initially, you can put in Docker file. After some point of time, you want to do this thing. Then use Docker execute command. So I hope it is clear. That's what it is. Docker logs fetches the logs of a container. I mean container ID, a container name. Docker inspect returns low level information on Docker object, containers, images, all that stuff, right? So in JSON format is useful when you want to do stuff like debug and stuff like that. Docker CP copies files and folders between container and the local file system, vice versa, which you will use when you run a thing. Docker top displays the running process with container. Docker commit container repository tag creates an image from the containers changes. So basically, about Docker commit, what it does is you have a container, you want to burn it as an image, then you use this commit, right? So from image to container, you Docker run. Container to image, you want to create one, something like that. So yeah, this is commit command you've got to use, right? So Docker network ls lists all networks that Docker uses. Docker network creates a new network unified network in the Docker. Again, this is in the container, right? So Docker network RM removes one or more networks. Docker network connects to a container to a network. I mean, basically, if the host system contains multiple networks, you want to facilitate to Docker image, Docker container, you can do this, right? With the use command. Docker network disconnect. Docker network inspect displays the detailed information on or more networks, right? So basically, this is what network related stuff commands. Basically, I have segregated them based on their uses. First is system commands, Docker basic system, that image related commands, then container related commands, then again container related commands, network commands. Like that I have segregated, right? Now volume management, these are useful actually for practical purposes. Docker volume ls lists all volumes, like where things can be stored. Docker volume creates a new named volume. Docker volume RM removes one or more volumes along with the dashboard. Docker volume inspect displays detailed information. Docker volume prune removes all unused volumes, stuff like that. So this is for volume management. In a practical example, we'll see in the one of the subsequent presentations. So I think that's pretty much about Docker commands. So I mean, Docker commands covers whole lot of stuff. Right from the system to image to container to network to volume, all the stuff we covered. So pretty much this is what it is that required for any computer, right, to system to run, right. So that's pretty much what it is. So hope it's clear. I mean, unless you put into practice, you don't understand completely, but we'll do this in a subsequent presentation. I want to cover the theory first, then we'll go do a demo of how things would work. Okay, thank you.
Like, share, comment, and subscribe VNR Digital Learning Resource YouTube channel.